The whole concept behind this thing actually was born in a river. Came up with this, we were actually targeting walleye. There was a school of them that they were living in a log jam, and I knew I needed to fight the current, and I needed something that would plunge straight to the bottom and weave its way down through the sticks as the current would take it. And then once it got there, I just wanted to tap it on the bottom underneath the log jam. But I also needed something that would come back up. It needed to snake its way back up through the trees and the limbs. And this was about the only way that I could see a bait coming back up through, but then having a small profile, something a walleye would eat. But as it's proven, it's shown us, you know, that it's a multi-species catcher. So that's kind of the backstory on how this thing was developed and kind of brought to the scene. It's just the fish catchingest little thing I've ever seen in the world. There we go. Yeehaw! Come here. Now that's probably my 6th fish or so. Oh, when they get it too, they get it. Nothing giant, but you can just get a lot of fish out of one of those little baits. You know, with all the hooks and weights and plastics that are available to fishermen these days, really you can kind of let your imagination go wild. And that's kind of what I did with this. This is, as we know to this day, called the tiny child rig. And I'm going to dive into some of the riggings and materials that you can use for the tiny child rig. The unique thing about this material is that it's very, very stretchy, and it lasts a long time, and it floats really well. So what you have is a hook that comes off the end and a weight that comes off the bottom. And the nature of this material, it just wants to float. So inherently, the weighted end is going to stay in contact with the bottom, and the light fine wired hook, it'll just stand up. It'll float. So it's pegged to the bottom, but it's the hook business end is floating up in the water. So that's really unique in that the hook is up here and the weight's down here. So when a fish comes and grabs it, more than likely they're getting the hook first thing. I'll use anything from a size 2 to a 2/0, depending on which TRD I'm going with. If I'm going with the small finesse TRD, I'll bump it down to the size 2. And then if I'm going with the bigger TRD, I'll jump up to the 2/0. That seems to fit quite nicely. I like using just the original Neko hook. What happens for me is I'll hook a fish and the bait will slide up my line. That's what I really like about it, is the lure will actually slide up my line. The fish doesn't have leverage over the bait as much. It helps kind of keep the weights inside of the bait as well from being thrown by the fish. When it comes to nail weights, there's a variety of different nail weights. VMC makes a half moon. There's little tungsten spike weights that you can put in. Z-Man made a Neko Shrooms. This is a wacky rig weight. I've actually grown really fond of this particular one. Once you get it in, it really locks in place. You can see you can pull on it pretty hard and that weight doesn't come out. What I've also done in the past to really lock them in is take a piece of fluorocarbon or braid and just tied the bottom of that plastic. You can tie it pretty darn tight with a shank of line. Helps keep that weight from flying out of there. So the great thing about this little tiny child is the way it's designed, it's just very streamlined and hydrodynamic, and it throws far and you can just fish it in a variety of different cover. You don't really need a lot of weight to fish this system either. The way that it falls, it kind of pencil dives. It takes the line down with it, and you don't really need a ton of weight to fish this thing in 20 feet of water.